So I wanted to tell you a story about the beginning. Right, here we are in a church. It's a brand new year. It is a new beginning. So just take a moment. I want you to imagine a place of silence, of darkness. A place that's even beyond and before silence and darkness. A void, bliss, total peace and calm. No need, no want for anything. A place of nothingness. No thing. Can you imagine that? Then you open to that place, that void, that silence beyond and before silence, that darkness that is beyond and deeper in darkness. And within that void, that nothingness, that no thing, a spark, a desire that says, I want to know. I want to know and experience myself. And in that moment, an explosion beyond anything you can imagine. An explosion of light, of substance, of thoughts, of feelings, of everything that we can imagine. As we look around at the night sky, all those stars representing many, many worlds and galaxies and universes that go on and on and on beyond our imagination. And within that everything, that spark of thought which exploded from that nothingness, let's bring it right back down onto this earth, this ball of balance and homeostasis, a wonderful word which I'll read you the definition in a moment. And on that earth, right here, right now, is you. Sitting here, watching me, feeling this moment, aware of yourself within this magnificent, eternal, infinite universe. And you can imagine that place of nothingness, that starting point, that beginning before all beginnings. And you can also be here in this physical body, which you don't have to do anything to make it happen. Heart beats, lungs breathe, blood flows, cells replicate and continue to house your consciousness, your place of awareness. So there's a word for what created that bang and what allows us to be sitting here as a separate part of the whole, but at the same time we can expect and understand and conceive that we are part of that whole, we are part of that energy, that power and presence that here in unity we call God the Good, but it's beyond name, beyond understanding really. And that word is, for today's talk, duality. Awful lot of talk about duality. And my feeling is that duality is that give and take, is that energy that creates this entire universe. You can call it polarity, call it the power of opposites. You could call it God the good, omnipotent, and me, and self, which is separate in a sense, but it also is part of that energy. So without duality, I don't believe we would have this experience, this universe. Everything that we experience. So let's look at opposites a little bit and sort of also look at that word homeostasis. So just call out, what are some opposites that we deal with here in this human experience?
Hot, cold.
Hot and cold. Very good. That's the one that came up for me really strongly. And as I looked at opposites, I also realized that there are many opposites that they are infinite. How hot can it get? Who knows, right? Who knows? We experience a certain amount of hot, then it gets so hot that everything, we don't know. How cold can it get? And yet within that infinite possibilities of hot and cold, we find this balance. We human beings find this balance at 98.6. Is that amazing? Every human being on the planet balances at that point. What are some other opposites? Up and down. Same thing. How high up can you go? Infinite. How far down can you go? And if you turn upside down, up and down have infinite ways of understanding it. Good and bad. Of course, in unity, we say there's only one power, one presence, God the good. So from that point of view, good and bad, it's really just part of our playground. Part of that homeostasis, that place where we find the balance. Because good and bad is a personal choice for each of us, and we can bring that down to what feels right or good to me and what doesn't feel so good. For the body, it's 98.6 and it happens automatically. And yet that's really what our choice is. Our power of choice comes out of this world of duality. And it's our choice as to what feels balanced to me. Where's that point of oneness within these myriads of opposites of duality? So our job as human beings in this world of duality, of opposites, of infinite possibilities, is to constantly be asking, where's my point of balance? Where is my homeostasis? And I'm going to read that word here. Homeostasis, the tendency of an organism or cell to regulate its internal condition, such as the chemical composition of its bodily fluids, so as to maintain health and functioning regardless of the outside conditions. The organism or cell maintains homeostasis by monitoring its internal conditions and responding appropriately when these conditions deviate from their optimal state. The maintenance of a steady body temperature in warm-blooded animals is an example of homeostasis. So that's nothing we have to do, right? Homeostasis is a thing that is built into the universe. It's what allows us to say, I surrender. I don't know the answer here, so I surrender it to the universe. It's what we do constantly every day when we get up and trust this body is going to get us through. I can eat what sounds good to me, and my body's going to digest it, get rid of what doesn't work, and take in what does. So once again, our job as we move through life is to turn over what we don't need to focus on, and then listen to our body, our feelings, our thoughts, our world, what's it telling us, and find the balance. So I'm going to read a little bit of the presence process here. The presence process enables us to embrace the insight that authentic growth comes from what we don't know. This cannot be overstated. It also can't be understood mentally. The thinking aspect of mind either assumes it already knows everything it needs to know, or it believes that anything not yet known can be acquired through the application of thinking and analysis. Since authentic growth requires a voluntary stance of not knowing, thinking we know exactly what's going on in each aspect of our experience makes it challenging to surrender to the presence process. As we enter this journey, we therefore open ourselves to the possibility that we don't know what we are, what we seek, or how to bring about this awareness. Indeed, we may be mistaken about everything we thought we understood. So just take a breath into that, not up here, but see how it feels in your body. That ability to not know. What I thought of as I read it was what Valerie shared about December 22nd, and now each year those shoots seem to come up on the fruit trees. The first buds begin to come out. Trees and plants, we do know, do not have brains. Yet there's a deep trust. We'll call it knowing that's beyond this intellectual knowing that Michael Brown is encouraging us to let go of. Because growth means we're moving to something new. And if it's new, it's something we don't know. So the trust in the duality of the world, that energy that created this infinite universe that we are a part of, it is holding us. It's bringing us into balance. We do have choice. But I invite you to look at, as we move into this new year, which I believe is also we're moving into a new age, a new way of being. I think we're in a very powerful evolutionary thrust that's going on in humanity. And I invite you to invite in not knowing. And what helps me to do that is the ability to turn it over. To turn it over to that source. That energy that holds everything together, that beats my heart, that causes me to breathe whether I'm thinking about it or not. How many things in your life do you think you have control of and spend a lot of time trying to manage that really can take care of themselves, that really do take care of themselves? The phrase that I've used a lot in the past couple of months is dismantle your structure of knowing. How much of the things that we know keep us in a box? My basic spiritual door that opened for me was my yoga practice. I was an atheist until I started practicing yoga. And then as I got connected with my body and the breath and would experience this miracle of life, I had to admit that there had to be something beyond and behind and before this physical world. I get goosebumps as I'm thinking about it. And so I go to the body to learn, to open, to go beyond this knowing. And when we don't know, what's our body language? What do we do when we don't know something? We open up. Look at this position. It's open. It's accepting. It's inviting. What do we do when we know something? Oh, I know that. We close off. We shut down. We say, I already know, because it makes us safe to know. My mother, when she was in the final months of her life and I went out to take care of her, was a very powerful learning experience for me, which meant my buttons were pushed quite often. And she said to me one day, you know, Cardi, that's my nickname, Cardi, that's what she called me. you know, Carl, you've got an explanation for everything. And I immediately felt offensive and said, well, you know, that's because I lived through divorce and I didn't feel safe back then. And right in the middle of my explanation, I realized, oh, and I also have an explanation for why I have an explanation for everything. And I stopped and I realized that that desire to know, for me, was about not feeling safe. It was about not trusting the world and what was going to happen. So I had to know everything first before I allowed myself to really be present in life. This is what the presence process has really helped me to let go of, to be able to trust the not knowing. And that in trusting the not knowing, we open to presence. We go, I don't know. And in that action of opening the heart, opening the mind, presence comes in. And when you're in presence, you don't need to know. Because you are experiencing God, the good, omnipotent. And you begin to look at the world very differently. The things that you used to shut down to and push away and think, I've got to figure out how to fix this. You invite in and say, wow, this is creating a lot of energy in me. Energy is what and who we are. In unity we call it God, the good. It's an energy of good, it's a movement, it's a flow. We talked about it when we talked about let the river flow. It's being able to trust this positive energy that's flowing through us.